Alright, so I have my stencil taped down completely, and I've got my pigment ink, and today I'm going to use the Simon Says Stamp White Pigment Ink. And I'm just going to take one of my little fingertip sponge daubers here. Alright, so basically I'm just going to get a little ink on my dauber, and then I'm going to go ahead and just pounce, pounce, pounce right through the stencil. And this will dry back just a little bit. It's going to just offer a subtle, lighter area in my background. So it isn't going to be like stark white against the color. I could work it, I guess, long enough to reach that point, but I do not want to do that. I am just going to add one layer here of the pounced white, and then it's going to allow the colors beneath to show through. And like I said, it'll dry back a little bit softer. And someone in a previous video mentioned, you know, why don't you just take the ink pad to the project and just rub the ink pad all over. And there's two reasons I'm not doing that. One of them is I don't want that much white ink. It would be a lot harder to control the amount if I just smeared the ink pad directly onto the stencil. And then secondly, I can't help but think, because this is a plastic stencil, and even though the edges aren't sharp, like, you know, they're not going to cut you in any way, but I would be concerned what they might do to the foam of my ink pad. So I wouldn't want to necessarily be dragging that foam across the stiff edges of my plastic stencil, because I would be concerned that I would fray the foam pad, or you know, make it a rough, uneven surface. And then when I tried to press a stamp against it, it wouldn't ink up my stamps very well anymore. So maybe I'm being overly cautious, but I don't want to accidentally ruin my pad. And the other thing is that when I'm done with this, I'm definitely going to want to take my stencil to the sink and rinse it off with warm soapy water, just to remove all traces of the pigment ink from the surface. And that way I won't get a film on my stencil, and then I won't accidentally transfer it to something else in the future. Now I'm going to go ahead, and instead of pouncing, I think I'm going to do more of a sweeping here when I get to the darker, because again, I'm not looking to leave behind a white coverage. I'm just looking for translucency. So I want a ghosty look, not a harsh white. So down in the darker color, I'll switch my technique a bit. This is a really great way to create a super interesting background very easily. And then if your ink blending isn't very well done, I'm famous for having very streaky, splotchy ink blending. So this will help hide any imperfections in that panel. So that's always nice too. All right, I think I did it. So now, and see, look, the white was mixing just a little bit with some of that Distress ink. It was picking it up. So all right, so let's go ahead and take off the tape and see what we created. Oh wow, look at that. That is so pretty. Now again, I'm definitely going to want to let this dry completely before I do anything with it. So that's no problem. I just want to be aware. And I also want to be careful getting it off my mat because I taped it down. And I don't want to get a big old fingerprint in my wet ink. But anyway, whoops. Gosh, isn't that lovely? I love that stencil so much. So anyway, that is the technique. And my plan is that once this is completely dry, I'm going to come up with a really cute little card idea, and I will use this panel in a future video. So stay tuned for that. And just like I had promised in this video where I made this background panel, I am going to use this for a card front. So I definitely want this to be the main image on that card front. I don't want to trim down too much. So I thought I would go ahead and open up a brand new stamp set for me. It's by Clearly Besotted and it's called Cool Dude. And it's this adorable little collection of turtles. So I love turtles, and strangely enough I have no other turtle stamps. So it just made perfect sense. And because this is kind of a smaller stamp set, I think this was like maybe $8 or something. So I really appreciate the lower price point. And now I've got turtles in my collection. So I have a piece of my favorite Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock here. And I'm just going to use Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I want to do coloring with alcohol markers. Alright, so I picked out some different colors to color the turtle, and I also zoomed in a little bit so that you could more easily see the coloring. So while I do this, I'm going to turn up the music and speed up the video, and then I will run all the colors across the bottom of the screen. And just so you know, each one of these I will be using my Copic sketch markers. So let's get started. Alright, so there are my little turtles, and I'm actually going to trim them out right along their cut line. So the fact that this smudged here at the outer edge is not going to matter. So I am going to use this little guy instead of that little guy. But I will save this inside the stamp pocket for a later date. So hang on just a second, and I'm going to get my... Actually, you don't have to hang on. It's right here. Anyway, here's my little trimmer. And of course, I'm going to go through and fussy cut these out. And then I'm going to think about what the next step is. So there's my little guys cut out, and put them here so you can see them a little better. They are so cute. Alright, now my final touch, I'm going to take my Memento black marker, tuxedo black marker, and this has a real beautiful brush tip on one end. So I am just going to use that to run around the edges of my turtles, and this will help cover up any white paper marks. Because of course, no matter how careful you are trimming, you're always going to see that white core of paper. Alright, so now I have some other pieces here that are going to make up my card. So I just, for placement purposes, I went ahead and stamped down the turtles on my base piece so I would know where to put them. And then in the set you get these little tiny air bubbles. So I am going to put air bubbles here, air bubbles here, very cute. And then there's a little fish, little tiny fish that comes with this, and I really think that these boys need some friends. So I'm going to just randomly stamp a couple fishies. There we go, aren't they sweet? So that's just gonna, oops, that's just gonna give a little bit of detail. And then this stamp says, you're totally awesome. There, boy, this is just gonna fit. Luckily, this was as wide as it was. Just so you know, this base piece I'm working on is 2 1/4 inches. So if you're curious about how long that stamp is, I'd say it's 2 1/4 inches. Very nice. Alright, I will clean those up later. And then I made a different card I'll show you at the end, but I actually just colored with my Copics right on top of the panel, and it really kind of looked cute because they are underwater. So once you see that, you'll understand what I mean. Anyway, I'm going to use my Y38 Copic marker, and I'm just going to quick go over these little baby fish. Alright, so now to stick down my turtles, I'm going to go ahead and use my Nuvo glue pen. And since the turtles are stamped right here, I'm just going to go over the stamped area as carefully as I can. So there you go. You're totally awesome. So now all of this is going to get stuck down on my card base. And I kind of did things a little differently this time. And, you know, whether or not it was a good idea, I can't really say, but thought I'd try. So anyway, I'm just going to get some tape down on my panel. And I have a piece of the My Favorite Things Blueberry cardstock here, which is a beautiful dark blue. And I'm actually going to start at the top because if I need to trim anything, I want to trim it down at the dark end because I want to preserve this beautiful pistachio color at the top. And these panels have dried overnight, by the way. I want to be careful I'm not smudging too much. But they did dry overnight, so that pigment ink and everything else has totally settled down. So it does look like I just have a tiny, tiny edge to trim. So when you flip it over and see the white side, it's very obvious. There we go. And this piece, as you saw, I put a little bit of my Sook Wang double-sided tape, which is a super, super strong adhesive. So here's my card base, and it's just my usual A2 size. And the tricky part, I'm not going to start sticking it down quite yet because, and this is where my planning went awry, but that's okay. So I've got some other panels that I'm going to put down. And the idea here is that I'm going to try to be as even within my card base as I can. And you can always trim your card base down just a tish if, you know, it'll look better in the long run. But anyway, so I don't know. I think I'll call this good. And then I'm just going to carefully, I'm going to hold down one end, take off the tape backing, supposedly. Awkward. It's normally not this difficult, but I'm doing this very strangely. Okay. So we get that settled down. Now come do the opposite. All right, so that's the center panel settled down. Now I'm going to take my ATG. So you're probably wondering why I didn't just cut a piece wide enough to start with, and that is an excellent question. But like I said, I thought I was being kind of tricky, and apparently I thought my card base was a lot bigger than it really is. Oh well. So there we go. All right, and now I have these little strips here, and this is some of the paper from that Bella Boulevard Secrets of the Sea collection. And I do have a 6-card, 1 collection video showing me using this paper, and I had leftovers. So of course I want to use them wherever I can. And I really liked these polka dots because I love the colors, and it just seemed to go nicely with the panel I created. There we go. There. Oh my gosh, isn't that sweet? So there you go. The sentiment, you're totally awesome. Some cute little turtles, some little fish to keep them friends. To keep them friends? Well, you know what I meant. Anyway, so there is my cute little card. I really hope that you enjoyed this one. I think it was a lot of fun, and it was a nice way to use up that panel because, of course, the minute I made it, I was thinking, oh yes, I'm going to definitely use this for something underwater. And I think that those turtle stamps are perfect for this. And then if you want to see, here is the other one that I made. This sentiment is You Turtley Rock. And again, it's the same general layout completely, but I just stamped everything directly on top of the background paper and then just colored it on top of the paper. And I think it looks really cute because, again, the idea that you're looking at little critters underwater helps explain why you can see those waves and the different plays of light. And I just think it turned out pretty neat. So don't be afraid to experiment. Alcohol markers are transparent ink, and so you can get this really pretty layered look just naturally because they're transparent and not opaque. So something to think about as a way to use your Copics in a new way. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun, and I will be back again with another video very soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.